The philosophers up to the time of Aristotle and just after, the philosophers up to and just after Aristotle, some of them we only have fragments. In fact, many of them, except Plato and Aristotle. We've got full writings, and even Aristotle, there's one we have fragments of. We've got one book, which I have, Propracticus, which is reconstructed from comments about him from later philosophers. Well, that's how we learn a lot of... Oh, this should be recorded. Yeah. Thank you. Are you ready now? This little book by... This is not Burnett. Oh, Nahm, yeah. I got another one, which is bigger. It contains fragments by the ancient philosophers and commentary on them. So you see, it's not very big. Some of them we have nothing written by them, but they have reconstructed their philosophy from the comments by Plato or Aristotle or other philosophers. So the very ancient philosophers, that is to say BC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they had to reconstruct a lot of them. Aristotle made a mention of them, somebody else would make a mention, and you can put it together and say, well, you've got a pretty good idea what they said. Sometimes they have direct quotes from these other philosophers. The fragments have been lost. No doubt a lot of them were lost because of the great fire in the 1st century BC at Alexandria, where it was an enormous library. It was fascinating to read it. They often write in poetry form, and sometimes it's difficult to grasp what they're saying. And the reason is they had no established vocabulary, no established literature yet. And they just knew each other very often and commented on what the other person said. I was reading Heraclitus this afternoon, some of his writings, and there are different ideas of what he really meant. We know this, that he said nothing is fixed, everything's in flux, everything's in motion, and underlying it is fire. Fire is the underlying thing, and all is in motion. Parmenides, on the other hand, said everything is static, everything's being. Those two established ancient philosophy, started philosophy off. One said everything's in motion, the other says everything's static. We dealt with this in metaphysics. You may have forgotten it. Anyway, I just want to show you how little philosophers have written in many respects. That little book, I think it goes right through to up to about 1 BC.
What's the full name of the book?
Selections from Early Greek Philosophy by Nahm, N-A-H-M. Probably a better one is Burnett, but it was just too big, wouldn't fit into my attaché case. But it's only a little bigger. And there's another good one, Kirk and Raven, and I don't know where the heck that is. Some raven's taken off with it, I'd say, but it's somewhere at home. I couldn't find it tonight. But these give you often quoting from a very famous man who's, I think it's Diels, if I remember correctly, D-I-E-L-S, I think that's the name again, and they're often quoting him as a great authority on these things. But it just shows you how we have to grope with early philosophy. I've taught ancient Greek and Roman philosophy, and it's quite interesting, quite interesting. Medieval philosophy is even more difficult in many ways because there are so many currents of thought. And as for saying that everything was very much Catholic in those days, therefore it would be restricted. Oh yeah, just read it. They fought one another, tooth and nail. Sometimes there were battles, real battles. And at Paris in the 13th century, there might be 5,000 to 10,000 people listening to a debate. I don't know how they heard them. They must have been magnificent speakers. But they would debate, and they'd be very diverse in some of their thinking. The story is told that St. Thomas, Albert the Great, which was his master, he was even known as Albert the Great in his own day. Magnificent man. I have a pile of his writings. They're in Latin, of course, and it's not an easy Latin to read. And St. Thomas was sitting there. St. Albert was the debater. He was the government side, if you like. And St. Thomas said, "Oh, you've got him there now. He made such and such a mistake." St. Albert turned around and says, "Quiet, young fellow. You're not the boss here yet." And St. Thomas was put back in his place. But you keep in your place and let me do the thinking about this. But Albert's observations about all sorts of animals and things. A friend of mine pointed out on one occasion when somebody in Australia, because you know we are a great shark land, two places in the world known for sharks, South Africa and Australia. And we have planes patrolling the beaches. There'll be 10,000 people on a beach on Sunday afternoon in summer. We have planes watching for sharks. And they radio down and tell the lifeguards to go out and chase that shark away. And then there are professional shark catchers there. But Albert wrote something that my friend, who was with the agricultural department in Australia, had occasion to correct some man who said, we've just discovered something about sharks. And John wrote in and said, yeah, well, Albert knew about this in the 13th century, and gave him the reference. So he had some amazing things. Yet, on the other hand, he spoke that he knew about unicorns. But you know, we don't really know what unicorns were. Were they soldiers with a horn on? And this is one theory, that they had the horn on the horse in order to scare off the enemy, or let them think they got a charger in their hands with a horn. The other thing was you've got to remember there were rhinoceroses in Europe in those days. Was it something like that, or was it pure myth? Because we must make no mistake about that. But sorry about that. But the bones of many animals that are in Africa only, or in Australia, are to be found in caves in Europe, where the Ice Age washed the bones into the caves. Velikovsky, Earth in Upheaval, you know Velikovsky, yes. He's the man who records this. Dr. Bonnet tells me he's been debunked these days, but I don't like that. I come from New South Wales, where a lot of the stuff he's talked about there, I know, I've climbed the cliffs, etc. But the people have got a lot to answer for if they say he's wrong. Got a lot of questions that we could ask and confuse them with. Anyway, so much for that. That's only just a little aside, which I want to introduce every time I can, about the ancient world. And because it was a ferment in the Middle Ages, a ferment of philosophy. There were Franciscans, the newly formed Dominicans, not the Jesuits, what was the other one at the time? The Augustinians, different philosophers, teaching different things, approaching from different viewpoints. But the great systematizer was St. Thomas Aquinas. He was the great master. Very good friend of St. Bonaventure, incidentally. Though they looked at it from different viewpoints. He was more Platonic, Bonaventure. But St. Thomas really systematized and showed how it is a great subject, the five sciences of philosophy. Now, I apologize for sending out stuff this week, about 5 or 6 pages, and then have to say quickly after, I quickly noticed that I had one passage duplicated. The only thing that would do is throw off the page numbering. But I introduced another passage in throwing off or telling you not to copy the first one. And even the last page, if I find a certain passage that I would like to put in there, I might put that in. Well, I know you won't mind rewriting a page. But 5 pages, I apologize for that. 6 pages, or whatever it was. Well, we're dealing with instinct. Or, better still, is there intellective life in plants and brutes? We saw that plants, there's no evidence that they have any knowledge. Though there are a lot of very, very special reactions of plants. As someone pointed out, you have a plant in one room and you start cutting it up, and a plant in another room reacts with electronic reactions, sort of electrical currents. It reacts tremendously. And the same with cows. They react to stimuli just the same way. No doubt it's founded upon reactions of irritability, that everything reacts in its own manner to some kind of stimulus. Now, what attracts us even more than plants in many ways, it's very hard to determine with plants what goes on there, but even more important is, do animals have intellect? They do some clever things. They have tremendous ability sometimes to speak. They've got all the organic structure and can be made to speak. I've mentioned about parrots. I've heard parrots many times. The usual squawk of the cockatoo. Big white ones with a yellow crest, or big black ones with red crests. I've never seen one of them outside of Australia. I think they're forbidden exports. People have travelled from Australia with parrots hidden in their luggage and in their coats, with an overcoat on and the birds, which are very quiet in the dark, pushed down in pockets. When they get to this continent, maybe half of them are dead, but the other half has survived, and that's been well worth their while travelling with them. But it's a cruel thing to do. And the parrot's got all the structure, and I've heard of other birds doing similar things. The parrots have a harsh cry, like that. Did you hear an echo somewhere? And the parrots can be made to speak. Pretty cocky, cocky, want a cracker? We call them cockies. It's a slang term even for farmers sometimes. He's a cow cocky, they'll say. And but they've got the structure for speaking. And even a dog, I've heard a dog speak. It had to be trained, and it was darn hard work. Captain Bamlett from, and where is he? Halfway up to Toronto. What's the big city again? Hamilton. The Hamilton Police. He was telling us when he was in my class, they trained dogs to sniff out drugs. But he said about every 6 weeks you got to retrain them. They didn't do it from intelligence, they did it from pure training. Just like acting like a tape recorder, if you like. The same with speech amongst animals. You have to constantly train them. The way they train them for detecting drugs is they get the drug, wrap it up in towels and make it like a football. Now it becomes a plaything. So the dog associates the smell of the drug with play time. And I saw it work on a train here one day, just came in from Canada. They caught a young man. He said, "How do they detect that?" He said to me. He had a wooden thing with completely enclosing a little bit of marijuana. But the dog detected it. Anyway, they have to be trained. And likewise with speaking, they have to be continually trained. And the parrot which says, "Pretty cocky, what a cracker," or something like that, that's all it does say. That's all it does say. It doesn't say anything else. I've never heard them say very much. But the lyrebird, L-Y-R-E, is a magnificent mimic. Oh, the sounds I've heard. The coach whip, I think I mentioned this last week. That's how the sound of the coach whip bird does along the creeks. And it's not a big bird, it's only about that big. And straight after it, you'll hear the same thing again. It's a lyrebird mimicking the thing. And the lyrebird, I've got a recording at home of a lyrebird with imitating a woodman's little motor when he was cutting wood. All the noises of the lyrebird, but not a word of speech. No matter how hard they've trained it, I don't think they get it to speak.
The minor bird.
The minor bird, yes, that's another one.
The minor bird can speak and make all kinds of metallic sounds. You think the vacuum cleaner's on, it's him. The doorbell keeps ringing and it's him. The phone rings and it's him.
In other words, it's a damn liar too.
I knew this bird personally. What?
It's a damn liar too.
Yes, he did.
Anyway, but these animals, that's not from intellect or intelligence. That's just purely and simply being recorded as on a tape recorder. They've been programmed. Now, these are, in fact, they're no better than, these are no better than tape recorders, as I've written here. Now, I've written on page 61, it might be argued that they have superior intellect and do not want to speak, either to each other or perhaps to us. This is against the whole idea of speech. Good is diffusive of itself, as the Neoplatonic philosophers from the 3rd to the 5th century used to say. Good is diffusive of itself. If you've got a good, you want to share it. I won $10,000 in the lottery, St. Joseph's Church lottery one day. And the secretary nearly went crazy with excitement over it. And then I went down and got the check. She said, "What are you going to do with it?" I said, "Well, put it in my pocket." She said, "Oh, get to a bank quick." She was worse than I was. And people want to think, and girls have come into the class and I've shown them, "Look at the ring I've just got, engagement ring," something like that. Oh, you want to share good news. Good is diffusive of itself. So if they had superior intellect, or they had any intellect at all, they'd be sharing it.
The ape studies, the chimpanzee studies have shown that the chimpanzees, the primates, do teach sign language to their young.
Well, monkey see, monkey do. It's all instinctive. It's all within the range of instinct. It's not real speech. They're all based upon the sensitive order, the whole thing. Sort of, the first, take this, a calf has been born. The first act it does is muzzle round and looks for the mother's teats. That is an act of judgment, prudential judgment, an instinctive act. After that, it becomes an act of a customization. I haven't dealt with the customizations yet, excuse me. The customizations are habits, but in the sensitive order. Habits, properly speaking, are in the intellect and will, but the sensitive order can develop habits. Somebody will be doing something. We know ourselves, habits are hard to break off. By that, the ordinary meaning of habit, we mean something which is the nerve have channels run through them. As a matter of fact, I didn't bring my writing book. I mentioned this before, I think last week. Sir John Eccles is the pioneer in all this. Not Sir John Eccles, sorry. My friend Dr. Kinsella. How over this space do nerve messengers travel? There are little basket cells. These have been photographed. And chemical substances are deposited in them. That's how we build up what we call, better than habits, neural habits, nerve habits. Playing the piano, they're playing day after day to build up those things. And what they're really doing is depositing acetylcholine and things like that in these cells. Now an animal will do that. It'll learn something, how to get out of something, or how to get into something, or how to do something. It'll pick it up. Then monkey see, monkey do. Others will do the same. We'll imitate it. They're great imitators, you know. And the question is then, is it an intellectual act? No, it's a neural act, a nerve act. Build up a customization in the nervous system. It used to be thought that was, could somebody cut that, please? I think it's over there. What it used to be thought, the time was shortened going through here. It was thought to be chemical, it was thought to be all sorts of things. But as Dr. Kinsella, driven by the ancient philosophers, like Aristotle and them, about what was called the humours, they said we had 4 humours, 4 liquids, go from the brain. How does the brain direct the feet? These 4 humours, as they call them, HUMORS, would drive or send messages down. They'd send these messages down. He thought, that's not a bad idea, said Kinsella. And he was explaining to us one night how this happened to all these neural cells. So animals do things, they learn by trial and error. They might, for instance, the monkeys, I think I mentioned about the apes, how they climb up on a sheet of paper to knock the bananas down when there's no box present. And the sticks that they pick up were all sorts of sizes, but 2 of them got jammed together because it looked as if they could fit together, and they did. And then it was thrown aside, and hours later, monkey picking sticks up again would pick up a little one, then pick up a big one, and climb on a box or climb on a sheet of paper. all sorts of strange things. Experiments have been done with apes. Well, we studied the psychology of intelligence. Mademoiselle Laurendeau, the professor, she said that the apes and babies have been compared in experimental work, and the baby will do things the other animal rather will not do. It just sort of follows the line straight away. If it picked up a key or something to replace a key, the baby would try something replacing a key, but it knew what the real thing was, the key. But the ape would push all sorts of things. And finally, if it discovered the key went in a certain place, from then on it forms a customization and follows that. Then other monkeys will imitate it. Been a lot of work done on this, but it's pretty fruitless. And the apes that they experimented with, this is all recorded in Dr. Bonnet's book, by the way. What was the name of the woman who was training them? I forgot the name now. Jane, I think it was, I'm not sure.
Jane Goodall.
Goodall.
Was that the one that trained with these? Yeah. Anyway, what happened? It bit a finger off. It just suddenly acted like an animal. It just bit a finger off. So, hardly intelligence. And animals would benefit enormously if they showed intelligence, if they showed intellect. Intelligence is the quality added to intellect, you remember, that perfects it. One of the 6 intellectual virtues. Well, they would benefit. They could scheme to get out of being beaten. They could scheme and all sorts of things. Or how to win the favour of the master. They'd be competing with the master, with others, for the favour of the master. They will do that now just as a matter of pleasing the master. But they could plot and plan and avoid lots of things, communicate with each other. And I've never seen a dog instructing other dogs. I've never seen that. I'd like to see it, but I haven't seen it. All I've seen is bow, wow, wow. So brutes do not have intellective powers. Remember, if they have intellective powers, then the metaphysical properties of rationality would apply too. Schooling, progress. I had to pull Mortimer Adler up in public on one occasion in Ottawa. He said we have no specific differences now with animals. No specific, thank you. We've got nothing that differs animals from man.
Adler said that?
Yeah, we can do anything that they can do, anything man can do. We can get them to do anything man can do. I was stunned. I said, except one thing. He said, what's that? This was in public, by the way. It was a special occasion in Ottawa. I said, progress. They're fixed in whatever they can do, they can be made to do. They can't progress. You teach a dog to detect drugs, or a parrot to say something, but that's all it will do. It'll do what you taught it to do. Or with some imagery, similar imagery, it might put something together, speech and sniffing or something like that. But he overlooked the one thing. Man can progress in everything he does. And man can be self-corrective. A little child can be that. A little child sometimes will say to his mother, but you said yesterday. Dog doesn't do that. Neither does any other animal. So subservience to a master argues against the presence of intellect, for the effects of intellective operation would give a distinct advantage to cows, horses, dogs, etc., their relationship with a master. A child grasps this even with the earliest development of his intellect, for his effort to speak is remarkable. His efforts to imitate are extraordinary, and also his progress is most notable, permeating as it does everything the child does. In Montreal, when I was working there, or studying there rather, I talked to a couple of women one day, and they had just moved into this apartment, and the mother suddenly had to stare open mouthed. Her little girl, in 3 weeks, started to speak French. They have an amazing aptitude for language, little children. And little Nadine, that lived next door to us in the apartment, it was a 6-apartment, 4-story building, and Dr. Nicolopoulos was there, and we were here. And I heard little Nadine call out from round the corner there, Tu vas tomber. You're going to fall. She saw a child climb up a stairway. Tu vas tomber, she said. And the mother said, I didn't know she could speak French. Tremendous aptitude in a child. Right from the beginning. You know, they'll say, first of all, blah, 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 trying to speak. Gradually words will come out. Dad, 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 mum, mum, etc. But gradually start to build up the words. You don't see that with animals. A chimpanzee was taken in by a professor of psychology somewhere in the past, I remember this, and he brought it up as their own child. Didn't speak, not a word. And speech is a property of intellectuality. So they would benefit enormously if they did have reasoning powers. There's summing it up. There's absence of evidence of intellect. There's lack of evidence, for example, that there's speech amongst brutes. They with the chimograph and a later machine whose name I've forgotten long ago. Linguists can pick out a language. I had a friend who was an expert in this in Montreal there, and Ottawa. I've known this family, French-Canadian family, for many years. They could listen to a language and begin to interpret the language by reason of this chimograph, which is just, a needle doing certain things on paper, that sort of thing. But there's a later machine. Whatever they can do can be explained from instinct. Association of images explains a lot. Those 4 points are set out for you there. Note that we train animals, but we educate man. Brutes display no progress, but act perfectly the first time in what they do. When they act from instinct, they do it perfectly the first time and every time, and don't go beyond that. They show a remarkable degree of cleverness. One example, for instance, a bird coming in to land on a branch. I've never seen a bird say, whoops, I missed. Go back, try it again. I've never seen that. First time, they calculate exactly and land on the branch. So we reserve the name sagacity, which is a Latin name for sort of shrewdness, wisdom, and we reserve that name in English for the brutes. What they do is truly remarkable at times, but always within the limitations of their species. Some brutes, for example, the Australian wild dog called the dingo, are very cunning. I've heard it said in various works I've read that men consider that as the most cunning animal on the earth. It comes from a very highly developed estimative sense. Remember, the animal has the estimative sense, which is the seat of all its instinctive activities. The ability of a horse to leap over a hurdle or a cow to jump a fence. A bull got mad at me on one occasion in St. Michael's Orphanage, where I used to go and take Father Woodbury, who was directing the breeding of cattle, etc. We were watching the cattle and gradually advising Joe, the farm hand, and he said to me one day, he didn't know why we were developing such magnificent cattle. I said, something occurs to me, you're feeding fresh grown feed. I said, that could have a lot to do with it. And he said, yes, that's a good point. But one day, this bull, he nearly attacked Father Woodbury on one occasion. I think I mentioned that last week. Woodbury just picked up a piece of wood and the bull kept his distance. He didn't know what Woodbury was going to do. But the bull got a bit mad at me for some reason. And I could see it sort of growling at me. And Father Woodbury said, I don't antagonize him, he said. These bloody things, he said, can leap a fence 6 feet high when they know they can do it. As soon as they realise they can do it, you can't. One bull on an orphanage in Sydney that was associated with St. Michael's, they had to destroy it, send it to the butcher, because it learned it could jump 6 feet fences. I didn't know how an animal could get its body over a fence that high. But he said they couldn't hold it. They had to end up destroying it. Would get out into roads, highways, etc. So the wasp, I mentioned that, the hairy Ammophila, kills a caterpillar in a certain very clever manner. which is far more clever. Weaver birds in Africa make special nests, and they appear to be designed to keep snakes out. Certain ants grow a fungus in their nests for food. Bees make hexagonal cells, but it took thousands of years for European engineers to discover that that's the strongest way to manufacture and build a sort of a fence or a building, hexagonal cells. Bees can signal where honey is to be found, the direction and distance, by dancing in a figure 8 and wiggling their tails. They learn based upon the sun. It's a geometrical thing. Well, I shouldn't say they learn, they do it automatically. And by wiggling their tails, it tells them the distance. All these things. I've got it all set out in biological works.
But that's communication. They're communicating.
That's right.
Speech.
Yeah.
Speech.
It's not speech. It's communicating. It's not the same thing. Two dogs having sexual intercourse on the street, they're communicating. But that's not speech. That's an instinct. That's fixed to their nature. They all do that from natural, not reasoning, but just from their instinctive acts, you see. They do it without being taught. They do it perfectly the first time. Same as the wasp that kills the caterpillar the first time. Remember, the wasp has eaten her husband. Now she lays the eggs, goes off and dies. And this has been observed experimentally very easily. There's nobody to teach the young, but the young turn around and do the same thing. Exactly. And do it perfectly the first time. Monkeys climb high into trees to avoid enemies. Yet we can never say that they're clever in the same way that we say it about man. Or the ability of a bird to land on a branch without missing. Well, you know what happens? A friend of mine, when we're in pharmacy, I don't see that spiked fence much around here. Even wooden fence that have a little points on them. It's calculated to keep people out, but it's a fence only about that high. And around a sporting field they had them there. And Ron decided to jump. And he miscalculated. He landed on it. Went right up under his body there, between his legs. Ended up in hospital. But bird wouldn't miss it. A bird would get it the first time, as it does on high branches. If we try to swing from branch to branch, etc. So they display apparent intelligence at times, but it is not the intellect of brutes which is involved, but the intellect of the author of the brute. It's one's fixed to operate this way, another's fixed to operate that way. One lot of birds will make a mud nest in a cliff. Another lot will make it in a tree, only in a tree. Swallows always make round houses. I had them breeding every year, the barn swallows in my garage. Then I suddenly realised what an idiot I am. Look at the mess they've made on my car. I was giving in to somebody who said, "Oh, let the poor little things go. Come in," and I'd go out and leave the garage door open about that much so they could get into the nest, etc. But I'm afraid it wasn't working. I was the one suffering. So it's the author of the brute that fixes it to operate it this way or that way or some other way. Either each brute is a genius or the author of the brute is a genius. Because each one discovers how to do what they do the first time. Brutes act as if they had a planned mode of action, that is, as if computerized or set to act in such or such a manner. Members of the species act according to the same plan. That's another evidence that it's fixed in their nature. So here are the 4 arguments against intellect in brutes. Lack of speech. All sounds of brutes are passion sounds for food and sex. Food for the individual and sex for the species. 2, lack of progress. What they do perfectly the first time. 3, lack of understanding of a means as a means to an end. I don't know whether I've observed this, I can't remember. Wallabies hide behind a stick after a bushfire in Australia. The stick might be that thick and the wallaby's body's that thick, maybe that thick, and they're peeping round. I've had geologists and others affirm this. My experience with a raccoon up in on the Bruce Trail up in the province of Ontario, hiding behind a white birch. The trunk of the tree was about a third the width of the raccoon. And I was watching, he's peeping around at me as I could see his whole body just about. I got up in the early hours of the morning and I thought, I could hear there's something going on. And he's trying to break into a cooler, which I had food. It was on each camping lot had a chairs and table there. And the raccoon was going clawing at it. And to this day I've got the claw marks on it. He couldn't get it open. And I thought it was somebody packing up nearby, leaving or something. I thought, boy, those neighbours are rowdy. Suddenly it dawned on me, that's only just outside my tent somewhere. And I got up and the fellow looked at me and peered me through his spectacles and then took off. And then I looked, there he is, peeping at me around the tree. Chimpanzees using a box to knock down bananas and then later trying to stand on a piece of paper to do the same. We're not always told this part, of course. And fourthly, lack of understanding of immaterial objects. And you deal with immaterial relationships, etc. The dog or the brute doesn't know what the hell you're talking about. Conclusion, plants and brutes do not have intellect. If anybody claims they do, they've got to prove it. The ones who reject it mostly, by the way, are psychologists. They reject it, just laugh at the biologists that put this forward. But you know what it is today. Everybody tries to be in everybody else's field, whether they know anything about it or not. I just received a paper, and it's a chemist has written something on ethics. I've only looked at bits of it, and I'm still laughing. So, any discussion on that? Would you like to say something about that, Mrs. Haig?
That definitely disproves Darwin's theory, then. Definitely.
Which
Like the theory of evolution that we all came from.
Well, it does poke fun and holes in his, yes, oh yes.
Because they're going to have a tremendous celebration for his birthday, and there's a lot of believers in that.
Oh yes. Well, that's just, there's a great fad, a great believer. Belief is the right word. A bunch of seminarians at Niagara University, Dr. Bonnet was teaching. And he said, well, you got a minute tomorrow to sit in on my class? And I said, well, I'll make some time. And I sat in there. And one seminarian looked round the class and he says, now, you can take evolution, for instance. Now, everybody believes in evolution. I'm sitting down, I just said, I don't. It shattered him, he didn't know what to say next. But he had no argument. I don't mean to say what he missed is I don't believe in evolution. I have seen it practiced when it's intra-specific within the species, cows generating cows, and we developed 1,000 pounds of butterfat a year. We developed them in the St. Michael's orphanage. These were magnificent cows, the Australian Illawarra Shorthorn. Magnificent cows. They don't exist outside of Australia as far as I know. But we've practiced evolution within the species. Dogs, look at all the kind of dogs. There's one like a sausage, made to go through tunnels and things. There's one that's a big woof, woof, woof thing, or like the Russian, what was it, wolfhound or something? And I was a boy, and my dad sent me on a message, and I came face to face with this dog. It was about twice my height, and it was peering over a fence at me, a Russian wolfhound. And they've all been bred out of the dog, but they're still only doggies. They're all within the same species. But to say that a dog evolved into a cow, or a cat evolved into a bull or something like that, no, I won't go for that. Woodbury wouldn't either. Woodbury always said this: the people who talk mostly about these things usually live in a classroom, has never been out of it on a farm. He said, they talk about animals without knowing animals. I've seen him handling animals. Boy, he was magnificent. He trained for the Royal Agricultural Society show in Australia, Easter show. It's the biggest thing in the world, I understand. And he trained a number of people to judge the cattle, to be judges. And anyway, the thing is, evolution, we'll be dealing with that later anyway. There are so many conflicts in evolution that the evolutionists don't know about. That's the thing that I find funny, but we'll see about them when we come to them. So, we come now to... Oh, was there any more discussion on that, by the way?
Well, just one thing. A lot of the domestic animals, like that people keep for company, dogs, cats, also horses, that humans seem to be able to bond with and kind of, I don't know if you would call it communicate with, but work in unison with somewhat.
Yeah.
Can't make any comments on that? Because
Well,
I think sometimes people would think, geez, my dog does, like you hear these stories of the dog pulling somebody out of a fire, or
Yeah. Well,
a
in
dog
love-
anticipating that its owner's sick and things like that. I find that kind of interesting. I'm not disputing what you're saying.
Well, this is sensitive
but-
love.
Yeah.
You see, it's not intellective love. Sensitive love between them. Yes, and we had, my mum and my father brought home a little Pomeranian dog on one occasion. It came from a house in which there was a tremendous amount of fighting between the husband and wife, and then a breakup of the marriage. And when he brought it home, they asked him would he look after it for a little while. And just, about 3 or 4 weeks or so. And my mother could do anything with that little dog, but it bit me a number of times when I would try to feed it. Bit my hand. Took an aversion to men and didn't make a proper distinction that I was one of those trying to feed it. You see, not harm it. But it had observed the husband and wife probably fighting, even pushing one another around or something like that. However, so sensitive love can explain a lot of things. And a dog will instinctively see the fire as a hazard. It was sad last night. What was it? There were 5 people, or yesterday was it, in Niagara Falls. 5 people got out of the fire and their 2 dogs died in it.
Right in the basement.
They're in the basement, were they? Oh, well, that explains something, that they probably didn't know how to get out or something. However, that's the sort of thing that can happen. But dogs learn to love people. I've seen dogs go out to a gate and be watching, standing there, waiting for the owner to come home. And as soon as they see him in the distance, the tail will start to wag. That's a reasonably common experience. Well, there's a lot of very strange things at times, very difficult to explain. But certainly the explanation doesn't lie in their intellectuality. As somebody says about a horse opening a gate, learned to open a gate. Yes, but it didn't know how to do that before it saw it. That part was the exit. And the master's hands went round it and just muzzled it. It didn't know what to do. Just muzzled the thing and finally accidentally opened the gate. From then on it becomes an accustomization. The first is an act of natural prudence, instinct, prudential judgment, the first act. After that it's always an act of the neural habitude, as we call it. Any other discussion on that? I've heard all sorts of things. When you get students that go, I got a cat, and my cat did this, and my cat did that.
You
It's
want to
quite...
hear about my dog anymore?
Pardon? What was that?
I said, did you want to hear any more about my dog?
Yes, you had told us something. Didn't you tell us one recently that was very interesting?
Dog with
The
slippers.
shoes? Yeah, he brings my shoes when he wants to go for a walk.
Brings his shoes. Well, of course, you see, there's association of images there.
Mm-hmm.
The dog knows something about that.
There was only one animal in the United States which was speaking. I saw it on TV, Mr. Ed.
Mr. Ed.
I saw it.
He said he saw it in the United States.
Very good.
I was informed.
Yes, there's a lot of...
Dinosaur too, Barney.
Dr. Bonnet and I don't know where we were, and somebody at some store or something brought out a big Barney. And he called out, "Oh, look, Barney!" He says, and I said, "Who's Barney?" I didn't know Barney at the time. It was a dinosaur. Yes, Mrs.
I'd
Hay.
like to know on your comment before why Dr. Bonnet is getting taken to task. You said he was getting comments on his theories.
Oh, bigotry.
Bigotry.
Just bloody bigotry, yeah.
Oh,
One fella says, he explains from medieval philosophy. Oh, this is absurd. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He didn't go into any argumentation.
oh,
If he had gone into an argumentation, you might have allowed him some leeway, this fellow. But he been a variety of... There've been a number of people criticised because if you disagree with evolution, you'll bring a holocaust down on your head. It's all a religious belief. It's little more than that. Somebody said it's a stupid theory to explain facts that they can't otherwise explain. But what's wrong with this? God created species. What's wrong with that? We can prove that he must have done the creating act. That's easy to prove. But we'll deal with some of that later.
Academics are fired for saying that. They're losing positions.
Are they?
For even suggesting intelligent design. For suggesting.
Oh, that, yes. Intelligent design,
For
yes.
just they lose their position, they don't get tenure. There's a whole film on it called Expelled, well worth seeing.
See, that's bigotry. Just blind bigotry. A fellow said to me, St. Thomas, he just set up a philosophy to defend Catholic teaching, that's all. What do you know about St. Thomas? He knew nothing. It's just bigotry. I believe this or I believe that. There's a hell of a lot of it. And it's worse amongst academics than it is amongst workmen. There's a perfect instance of that, isn't there? This bigotry. And
What's the implications of if there's a designer, if there is a God that does that, that has implications for our behavior.
Oh, exactly. Oh,
That's
yes.
what's behind the
Yes.
entire rejection of God.
In my first paper, I've published 6 on capital punishment. And in the first one, I said, there's so much something hullabaloo about this topic, but I will start with the principles established by St. Thomas. I was at the University of Honolulu. I was called in there and I just was inspecting the place while I was there. And one of the faculty I met, this is interesting. We never get anybody from the mainland, or rarely get anybody come here. This is wonderful. Would you like to give us a talk, present something? What subject? I said, what about capital punishment? That's a good idea. I said, as a matter of fact, I can give you a copy of a paper I published. I gave it to him. Oh no, we don't need any wet lectures here. He said to me, prior to that, he said, anytime you're passing through, call in. I said, I pass through Honolulu. I was going there once a year. And I wrote to him and I said, since you had said that, I thought I'd notify I'd be passing. I didn't say that. If you turn the mic off, I'll tell you what I said, but I won't. I better not. I mean, the man was a plain liar. He sent me a copy of a paper, and all it is this one said this, that one said that, this one said this, that one said that. Yeah, just a description of bits and pieces. But Father Raymond was right. When I was about 17 or 18, he said, I told him I'd started work and I was a bit, it must have been my 20s. Anyway, he said, always make the other man answer the questions. Answer the questions. I've had students say, what do you think of so-and-so? What did he say? The student didn't know, but what did I think of him? They don't bother to really find out what the fellow said. It's all, they're seeking opinions, that's all. Just want to have an opinion about something. So then, my friends, we come to chapter 7. Now we want to know about the spirituality of the human intellect. Have you got the pages of the chapter?
I don't have it.
I put it out last night.
Yes.
I didn't get it. I missed it something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What page are we on?
Page 63. First of all, the history of the problem. And you don't need to have it pages in front of you. I've got down what was said. Anaxagoras.
63.
Yep. Anaxagoras. He set the stage for later philosophers. He wrongly claimed that there is a little of everything in everything, except mind. He said everything contains a little of everything else. Now remember, these men were groping. They're the beginning of philosophy. They didn't have people to guide them before them. I think he was the one that Aristotle said he spoke like a wise man amongst drunkards. I think he was the one that Aristotle referred to. I've forgotten now. He said, nous, which is the Greek word for mind. Now be careful of the word mind, by the way. I prefer to say intellect, but sometimes mind crops up. The human mind, by a lot of people, they mean the intellect and the internal senses. The intellect inspiring the internal senses, if you like, or the other way round. Nous is infinite and self-ruled. He's talking of the intellect now, and is mixed with nothing, but is alone. And he's claiming it's the only thing that's alone. Itself by itself. Or, and now I'm quoting again, the things mixed with it would hinder it, so that it would have power over nothing in the same way that it has now, being alone by itself. You'll see the force of this in a minute. So, John Burnet, Early Greek Philosophy, there's a wonderful book. I had it in my hand yesterday and I couldn't find it to bring tonight, but it's similar to this, but much bigger. So, if the intellect had other things in it, or something in it, besides itself, it would impede it from knowing. That's one of the greatest statements ever made in the whole of philosophy. I've threatened to write a book on this. It comes to this. What appears inwardly prohibits and obstructs the extraneous. If we had blue in the eye, it would obstruct redness. Just as a vase that's blue and it's water inside it, clear water, no colour, but it looks blue because of the blueness of the vase. We're going to develop that shortly. But anyway, I just wanted you to see that Anaxagoras said it. Well, what I should have put in is the years of these men. I might give you a special sheet on that. That'd be an idea. Special sheet on the... I know I've got to give you a bibliography too. Plato, and we're dealing with the history of the problem. Plato said the ideas are separate in another world. A pure horse actually exists in another world. A pure tree, a pure dog. All these universal, immaterial concepts exist in another world. And before our souls came into our bodies, we were familiar with all these things. And now the soul's in my body, this universal concept, which they call the idea, in another world, I look at this gentleman, this lady, and I say, then I remember. They call this reminiscence. I remember, yeah, when I was there, like this idea in the other world. So I call this human person. This is a human person because it resembled this human person. So for every idea we have, there's a pure idea in another world. That's Plato. And somebody said to Socrates, who proposed this the first time, Socrates didn't leave any writings, unfortunately. All his writings, what he would have written, is all in Plato, his student. Somebody said to him, and what about mud? Would there be a pure mud? Well, we'd have to hold that to be logical, said Socrates. And of course, I think I mentioned to you the difficulty that Socrates had. Here's one man, another man, another man. This one is participating in madness, so is this one, so is this one. The middle man, which is taller than the shorter man, is participating in the idea of tallness. But it's also participating in the idea of shortness compared with this other man, the third man. So this is participating in shortness and tallness at the same time. They saw that as a great difficulty. They couldn't work that out. So that was Plato's idea. But he presumes that the soul can exist apart from matter because it was in another world before it came into our bodies. And when we die, it goes to the other world and is sent back to another body. And that's where a lot of people, I think, got the idea of of reincarnation. But Plato didn't understand the concept of matter as a receptacle of form, as it were, that had to be informed to be something. So it is my idea that that is why he didn't realize that if your soul came back into some other body, it would look exactly like you are, you'd remember it, and all your ideas would go with it. And he didn't seem to realize that because he had no idea of matter. That matter is what is informed by a form.
So are you saying that the ideas exist before the soul comes into our body?
Exactly. That's what Plato taught. He thought,
I can't see that.
well, he couldn't understand. How is it they can say, this gentleman, this is man, this is man, this is man. By man, I mean human person. How can I call them all man? It's the problem of the one and the many. Where's the oneness? Man. This is Bob, this is Joe, this is Ted. Well, how are they're all one by being man, but yet they're three, they're many. The problem of the one and the many. So how is it that they all got the name of man? Because they resemble this universal man in another world. So he hadn't developed the idea of the concept of the intellect that we can produce the concept in ourselves. You see, he didn't understand that. But he did not explain how we are in touch with that other world. Didn't explain that. Lots of things not explained that we later philosophers have thought about them and wish they could understand them. But how do these three resemble each other in being members of the human race? Because they all resemble this uniform, or this one man in another world, this idea man. They thought all the ideas were there in another world. And there are men who think this was great, and this is really where all philosophy began. Somewhat. It really began before that. Parmenides and Heraclitus and Anaxagoras, if you remember those three names. So he presumed that the soul can exist apart from matter, because it can be in this other world before it came to the body, then it can go back and go into another body when it dies.
Excuse me, aren't we saying that in Christian philosophy? Aren't we saying the same thing, except
What?
that it will go back up again? That the soul, it can exist apart from the body.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Well, there's nothing.
He wasn't totally wrong.
No, he wasn't wrong about that. And as a matter of fact, as St. Augustine said, all those ideas, they're in the mind of God. You see? So that's why in the medieval period, Plato was favourite. And Aristotle and not Aristotle, St. Thomas and Albert the Great, his master, were condemned for teaching Aristotle. I've got a picture. One of my students gave it to me. One of my students' mother gave it to me. She loved my first name, so she said, I've got to get him this painting by Raphael. I'll bring it in. And you see Plato and Aristotle. I think it's entitled The Academy. Plato and Aristotle walking in. Plato is talking to Aristotle like that, pointing up the sky, and Aristotle's pointing down to the ground. One was earthy and scientific, the other was ethereal and heavenly. So Plato was safer. And some mischievous spirits in the Middle Ages had St. Thomas condemned, and well, they say condemned, was stopped from teaching. They tried to stop him teaching, but thank God, Albert the Great and St. Thomas fought back. Somewhat like Father Gruner in Canada. He's fighting back. And what I've read, I like. He fights much more intelligently than other people. I'm surprised this. No wonder Chesterton said man's the only wild animal. Man's the only wild animal. He can only be the only one that'll say things that are wrong and to be condemned. And look at what men can do to each other, torture and things. You don't see this amongst animals. You might see chimpanzees gang up on somebody, but they're worried that he'll break up the particular group they belong to and that sort of thing. I heard about a Russian, an American, and a blonde. The Russian said, we put the first satellite in the air. The American said, yes, but we put the first man on the moon. And the blonde said, and we women are going to be the first on the sun. The two said, what? You can't do that. You'll frizzle up. You'll burn up. Well, we're not stupid altogether. We'll do it at night. You approve of that one, do you?
It's always a signal for coffee, right?
That's right, yes.